Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Well, thanks for joining us for this edition of Donnybrook. Great to have you with us, and a special guest for next up. Halfway through this hour, we'll talk to Dr. Art McCoy, the retiring superintendent from the Jennings School District, who's going to take on the task of creating a larger workforce in the greater St. Louis area at the behest of the Regional Business Council. So Dr. McCoy in about 30 minutes. But first, let's meet the panelists who are about to discuss the hot topics this week in the St. Louis area, starting with the news director for the Big 550 KTRS and the co-host of the Jennifer and Wendy Show, Wendy Weiss, along with Mr. Joe Holloman, sitting in for the vacationing Bill McClellan. Joe, of course, the great columnist for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. And we welcome Ray Hartman, one of our founders, who writes for rawstory.com, the Riverfront Times, and he hosts his own show weeknights on KTRS. And we've got Alvin Reed with us from the St. Louis American and more. And we'll just kick things off, Ray. You did not get in a fight with that bear in your neighborhood, but like so many others, you got tangled in the dog leash and took one for the team, huh?
No, the bear got in a hook. I got in a right uppercut, and he ran up the tree. That's a good story.
I like that one.
We all stand in awe of educators who way before the pandemic were challenged in so many ways in the classrooms, having to be everything for so many children today. And not the least of which in terms of some of those challenges is just the available bandwidth, internet access, and that kind of thing. Missouri has actually committed to expanding the bandwidth and to make it more accessible for kids all over the state. How important is that, Dr. McCoy? And are you happy with any progress that you have seen to this point?
Let me give you a little bit of insider talk. I'm never satisfied, but I am pleased with what we did regionally, but not in the state. So there are still about 20% of our rural families that don't have internet access. One of the first things I did was I reached out to Sam Page. I texted him. I said, we need $4 million as a school district. I said this in March and April, and he jumped on it real quickly. So he was very responsive, and he said, hey, I'll give you $4 million, but who else can you share it with? He held a meeting in our gym, and he initiated the library broadband situation with hotspots for every one of our kids, as well as Chromebooks, not just for our kids, but for Normandy, Riverview, and even I asked him to help out Kevin Carl's district, Hancock Place, and others in South County, St. Louis. And it happened. It was not that fast in the rural areas. They, to this day, don't have broadband connection. So there were 7 C's that we focused on as I wrote the paper for how to school successfully during COVID. One was connectivity through hotspots. The second was computers. Everybody should have Chromebooks, 1-to-1. The third were life coaches to deal with mental health, trauma, and anxiety. As you point out, Wendy, we were focusing on these epidemics before this pandemic of mental health crises, where 7 out of 10 youth had mental health trauma, and during the pandemic, more like 9 out of 10. So those are the first 3 C's. We needed champions for certain policies and procedures, as Ray pointed out, to make education more equitable. And then, of course, we needed courage, and we became contact tracers. I had 1/4 of my staff become certified contact tracers. And then lastly, we had to make a commitment to real-time communication and facts because things were changing so much. Those were the 7 C's that had us be successful during COVID. I'm on the governor's task force for the reentry of school. I shared it with the state. We got it to MSBA, to all the school board members and so forth. So I totally agree with you. We have our work cut out to make sure that across the state you have broadband connectivity as well as computers, 1-to-1 Chromebooks and more.